I want you to imagine a very specific sound for a second. Just, picture in your head.
Okay.
The rhythmic mechanical hum of a laser printer waking up. The sliding of paper through the tray. And then this heavy, authoritative thud as a 9-page stack of paper hits a wooden desk.
It's a pretty unassuming image for something that caused so much disruption.
It is, but that is exactly what it is. That is the sound of the world changing. So, welcome back to the deep dive. Today, our mission is a complete forensic deconstruction of a document published on October 31st, 2008.
Right, Halloween.
Yeah, Halloween of 2008. It's a tiny 9-page PDF titled Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system by the pseudonymous Satoshi Nakamoto.
And we're pulling from a few different places for this, right?
Exactly. We are synthesizing the original white paper itself, the pretty chaotic early cryptography mailing list archives, and Erasmus Cromwell Smith II's documentary book, Satoshi Nakamoto, The Biography of a Ghost.
A great read, by the way.
Yeah. Incredible read. And I have to tell you, reading through these sources, really looking at this text, it is nothing short of a digital declaration of independence.
I mean, that's a strong phrase.
But it fits. For 30 years, the greatest computer scientists in the world were trying to solve this impossible puzzle. Like, how do you have a referee without a boss?
Right.
How do you create absolute trust between total strangers on the internet without some massive institution forcing them to behave? And Satoshi solved it in 9 pages.
Well, I read those exact same 9 pages, and I have to push back right out of the gate here.
Bring it on.
What you're calling a Declaration of Independence reads, at least from an institutional perspective, like a manifesto for a world without adults.
A world without adults.
Yes. Because, look, the computer science is novel. I will give you that entirely. But economically, when applied to actual human beings, it is a blueprint for financial anarchy.
Okay, that is...
You are taking regulatory frameworks that took literally 5 centuries of banking law to refine, and you're trying to replace them with raw, unfeeling code.
But to understand why 9 pages of math could threaten the entire global financial establishment, we have to start exactly where Satoshi starts in the text.
The first section.
Right, the opening argument.
Yeah.
So Satoshi points out that commerce on the internet relies almost exclusively on financial institutions acting as trusted third parties. You can't just hand someone digital cash.
Right, because this is the traditional intermediary model. If you want to send money to someone across the world, you can't, hand them a physical $20 bill through the computer screen.
Right, obviously not.
You have to use a bank or a credit card clearinghouse to verify that you actually have the funds in your account, debit your ledger, and then credit theirs. It's necessary.
But Satoshi identifies this exact reliance as a massive vulnerability. Because these banks, they act as rent seekers. They impose what is essentially a trust tax.
A tax. It's a fee for a service.
I call it the leaky Fiat bucket. Think about it. Let's say you're sending money to your family in another country. Your local bank takes a fee, right?
Yeah.
Then it goes to a clearinghouse. And they hold it for, 3 days? Generating interest for themselves, slicing off a margin.
It takes time to settle.
Then it hits an international wire service like SWIFT, taking another fee. Finally, the receiving bank takes a cut. You start with a gallon of purchasing power, and by the time it reaches its destination, you've got 3 quarts left.
Whoa.
And worse, at any hop along the way, an intermediary can just say, no, we're blocking this, funds frozen. You don't actually own your digital money, the bank does. You just hold a digital IOU.
Okay, you call it a leaky Fiat bucket. I call it empirical reality and a vital safety net. This is exactly where the cypherpunk ideology collides with systemic risk.
How is controlling my own money a systemic risk?
Because trust is not a bug to be removed from the financial system. It is a feature that keeps society safe. Let's look at why banks take a cut.
To make billions of dollars in profit.
Well, yes, but they also provide fraud protection. They provide chargebacks if a merchant scams you online. They provide robust identity verification to stop money laundering and terrorist financing.
But they also get the absolute power to decide who is allowed to participate in the economy. They are gatekeepers.
They are gatekeepers who provide a mechanism for human error. Let me ask you this, and I mean you, the listener, directly. Think about your everyday life. Do you really want to be your own bank when you forget your password?
I know.
Because in Satoshi's system, the unforgiving nature of the architecture is brutal. There is no customer service hotline.
That's true. There's no 1-800 number for Bitcoin.
Exactly. If you lose your private cryptographic keys, or if you make a single typo in a transaction address, it means total and irreversible loss. Your money is gone forever. The bank is the adult in the room that resets your password and reverses the fraudulent charge.
Okay, I will concede the danger there.
Mhm.
Total sovereignty means total responsibility, and that is terrifying for a lot of people.
It's disastrous for the average person.
But let's follow the engineering problem Satoshi was trying to solve. Because it's fascinating. If we remove the banks, if we fire the adults in the room, as you call them, how do we stop people from cheating?
Right, the counterfeiting issue.
Exactly. This is the core issue with digital items. A digital file is just data. If I have an MP3 or a Word document, I can copy and paste it a million times.
Yeah.
I can email it to you, and I still have the original on my desktop.
Yeah.
So if digital money is just a computer file, what stops you from spending the exact same digital dollar twice?
And you are describing the infamous double spend problem. This is what stumped everyone.
Right.
Without a central server like Visa or PayPal checking everyone's account balances in real time, how do you ensure that the digital dollar you just emailed to Alice hasn't also been emailed to Bob?
You can't. Not traditionally.
Right. For decades, computer scientists assumed you absolutely needed a centralized clearinghouse to stamp transactions as final and delete the dollar from your account so you couldn't reuse it.
Until the concept of the public diary. Let's unpack Satoshi's solution here because I think it is brilliant.
Okay, let's hear the analogy.
Imagine a room full of people transacting. Instead of one banker sitting at a desk keeping a secret ledger of who owns what, everyone in the room is handed an identical open copy of the ledger.
And public diary.
Exactly. Whenever a transaction happens, it's broadcast to the entire room. Someone shouts, "I am giving $5 to Alice." Okay. And everyone writes it down in their diary simultaneously.
Okay.
Because everyone sees the exact order of transactions, what Satoshi calls a distributed timestamp server, nobody can cheat. The network weaves an unbreakable chain.
An unbreakable chain, right?
Because if you try to turn around and spend that exact same $5 with Bob, the whole room checks their diaries, sees you already gave it to Alice, and just rejects the transaction.
Okay, let's analyze the mechanics of this public diary from an engineering perspective. What you're describing is highly inefficient.
Inefficient.
Incredibly. You are asking a decentralized network to broadcast every single transaction to every single participant in the world.
Yes, so everyone has the truth.
But from a systems architecture standpoint, a central database is infinitely faster, cheaper, and safer. Asking millions of computers to independently download, verify, and store the data for every single cup of coffee bought worldwide is a massive technological burden.
Well, storage is cheap now.
It doesn't matter. It is incredibly clunky compared to a single optimized bank server routing traffic.
It's a trade-off. You trade a little efficiency for absolute independence from the central bank.
It's an immense bottleneck. But setting the inefficiency aside for a second, it raises a critical, fatal security question.
Which is?
If the room is voting on the truth of the diary, based on everyone having a copy, how do you prevent malicious actors from spamming the room?
Ah, the Sybil attack.
Exactly. What stops someone from writing a simple computer script to create a million fake identities, flooding the network with fake nodes, and taking over this public diary to rewrite history and double spend their own money?
And that is exactly what I thought too, until I read the part where Satoshi anchors the entire digital system to the physical laws of the universe.
The physical anchor.
Yes. To stop fake identities from taking over, Satoshi integrated a concept called proof of work, drawing heavily from earlier cypherpunk research, specifically Adam Back's Hashcash.
Right. Hashcash was designed to stop email spam.
Exactly. So Satoshi adapts this. You don't get a vote in the room just by existing. You get a vote by proving you expended real, physical, computational energy.
Right, and this is the mining mechanism. To add a new page or a new block to the ledger, the computers in the network must solve complex cryptographic puzzles.
The puzzles.
Right. They are running data through a hash function, essentially guessing a random number, called a nonce, millions of times a second, until they find a hash that meets a specific mathematical target.
Wait, hold up. Slow down. I'm looking at section 4 of the white paper right now.
Yeah.
And when it starts talking about nonces and SHA-256 hashes, it reads like absolute gibberish to me.
It is dense computer science.
Can you explain this like I'm 5? What actually is a nonce and what is this puzzle?
Fair enough. Let's break it down. Think of a cryptographic hash function like a mathematical meat grinder.
A meat grinder.
Okay.
You can drop a steak into the grinder, turn the handle, and it grinds it into a very specific shape of hamburger. But you can never, ever ungrind the hamburger back into a steak. It's a one-way street.
Makes sense.
So the network takes a page of transactions, which is the hamburger, and demands that the meat grinder output a result that starts with, say, 10 zeros.
Which is mathematically highly improbable.
Exactly. It's incredibly rare. The only way to get those 10 zeros is to keep tweaking the input slightly before you grind it.
And that tweak is the nonce.
Yes. That tweak, that random number you add to the data, is the nonce. You can think of a nonce like the combination to a padlock.
Okay, I like that visual.
Imagine millions of computers acting like blindfolded people trying to crack a padlock by just rapidly spinning the dial and guessing the combination simultaneously.
Millions of times a second.
The first one to hear the click solves the puzzle, gets to add the next page to the diary, and gets a reward.
Yes. It is digital gold mining. And it is a stroke of absolute genius because it tethers digital money to physical reality by burning electricity.
Yes. To guess those numbers, to spin that dial millions of times a second, computers require electricity, real-world power. It creates what cryptographers call unforgeable costliness.
Unforgeable costliness.
You cannot cheat the system, you cannot spam the network with a million fake votes without burning massive amounts of real-world energy. It makes forging the ledger physically too expensive to pull off.
And here is the dark side of that unforgeable costliness. It is an environmental catastrophe by design.
Oh, come on, catastrophe.
Yes, forcing vast warehouses of computers to waste massive amounts of electricity running their processors to the melting point to solve completely useless mathematical meat grinder problems.
They aren't useless, they secure the network.
That isn't an elegant solution. It is a fundamental and reckless flaw. You are literally burning the planet's resources to act as a substitute for a trusted bank server that could process the exact same transactions using a fraction of the power.
It isn't a waste of energy, though. That energy expenditure is the exact mechanism that decides who gets a vote in governing the network.
But the cost.
It is the invisible wall protecting the financial sovereignty of the participants. The protocol dictates that the longest chain, the chain of blocks with the most accumulated proof of work, is the absolute objective truth.
Right.
The system operates on the assumption that honest nodes, working together, will always outpace attackers. It's a one CPU, one vote system.
Which sounds incredibly democratic until you look at the empirical reality of how computing power actually scales.
What do you mean?
What happens when massive botnets or industrial-scale server farms take over? You are trusting that the so-called good guys will always have more computing power than the bad guys.
They usually do.
But if an entity or a coalition of entities gathers 51% of the computing power, they dictate the truth. They can rewrite the public diary.
That would be incredibly expensive.
But possible. So you haven't actually removed power centralization. You have just replaced heavily regulated, legally accountable central banks with shadowy, unaccountable mining cartels operating wherever industrial electricity is cheapest.
I have to push back hard on that, because you are missing Satoshi's true masterpiece in this entire design.
The game theory.
The incentive structure,
Yeah.
yes. Let's look at the game theory. Sure, a shadowy cartel could try to spend billions of dollars to amass 51% of the computing power. But why would they?
To steal the money.
But the digital referee works flawlessly because it is mathematically and economically more profitable to play by the rules.
Walk me through the economics of that, then.
The protocol rewards the computers that solve the puzzles with freshly minted Bitcoin. If you spend billions of dollars on server farms and electricity to attack the network and rewrite history, the world will instantly realize the network is compromised.
Right, trust evaporates.
Exactly. The value of the Bitcoin drops to zero. You just burned billions of dollars to steal something that is now completely worthless. You destroy the value of the very system you're attacking. But if you use that exact same massive computing power to help the network and process honest transactions, you mine fresh coins and legitimately get rich. The system essentially recruits its own potential attackers to be its bodyguards.
I will admit the game theory there is remarkably clever.
It's beautiful.
The math perfectly aligns self-interest with network security. It assumes human beings are fundamentally greedy and harnesses that greed to validate transactions.
Exactly.
But that is exactly my core concern with this entire document. What happens when this theoretical closed-loop code collides with the messy, unpredictable reality of global economics?
It fixes it.
Math is clean. A mathematical meat grinder is clean. Human panic is not.
Then let's pivot right now to the very real, very messy financial panic that birthed this 9-page PDF. Because Satoshi didn't just release this into a vacuum.
No, the timing was very deliberate.
The Genesis block, the very first block of data ever mined in this system, contains a hidden text message embedded in the code. A time-stamped headline from the Times newspaper on January 3, 2009. Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks.
A very clear ideological marker.
It grounds the entire computer science experiment in the real-world deterioration of the American dream. Think about what happened. Between 2008 and 2022, central banks globally injected over $25 trillion into the economy through quantitative easing and bailouts.
The response to the crisis, yes.
That is $25 trillion created out of thin air, handed to the exact institutions that caused the crisis, while stealthily devaluing the savings and purchasing power of everyday people.
That's one interpretation of monetary policy.
It inflated asset prices, put homeownership out of reach for millions of young people, and punished anyone who simply tried to responsibly save their money in a bank.
Well, the macroeconomic policies of the last 2 decades are certainly controversial, and the inflation of asset prices is a documented empirical reality. I'm not denying that.
So contrast that $25 trillion of arbitrary printing against a core promise of the white paper. A strict, mathematically unchangeable supply of 21 million coins.
The fixed supply.
That's it. There will never, ever be more. The white paper isn't just a piece of software. It is the first legal system that cannot be lobbied.
A legal system.
It is a fixed law, protecting your savings, your labor, and your dreams of home ownership from being diluted by an unelected committee of central bankers adjusting a spreadsheet. It is the ultimate refuge from the leaky fiat bucket.
Okay, let's get relentlessly analytical here. You are framing a rigid line of code as a savior, but rigidity is exactly what causes complex systems to shatter under pressure.
It makes it incorruptible.
I want to point you directly to section 11 of the white paper, the calculations section.
Right, the probability formulas.
Yes. Satoshi lays out the mathematical probability of an attacker catching up to the honest chain, using equations based on the gambler's ruin problem.
Okay.
It's the statistical certainty that if a gambler with finite chips plays against a casino with infinite chips, the gambler will inevitably go bankrupt.
Right, the house always wins.
Exactly, and Satoshi applied this to the network. An attacker trying to rewrite history is the gambler. The honest network is the casino. It's brilliant probability. But it demands a terrifying question from all of us.
Which is?
Why should we trust probability over the police?
Because the police, the regulators, were entirely asleep at the wheel in 2008. The safety net failed.
Perhaps. But a hard-coded algorithm has no human heart. It has no flexibility. In a devastating real-world crisis, a system without a lender of last resort is doomed to collapse.
But the lender of last resort is what caused the inflation.
Think about this realistically. When the financial system seizes up, when a global pandemic hits, central banks inject liquidity to stop the entire economy from freezing and millions of people from starving.
By printing money.
They adjust interest rates. They provide a vital shock absorber. Satoshi's system removes the shock absorber entirely. If the global economy crashes, the code doesn't care. It just keeps ticking out blocks every 10 minutes.
Exactly. It's stable.
You are trading the subjective judgment of human beings for the cold, unfeeling execution of a machine.
We traded the subjective judgment of humans because human judgment proved, repeatedly, that it could not be trusted with a money printer.
But you are assuming the math is infallible. If there is a critical bug in the code, if a hostile nation-state decides to coordinate a 51% attack, there is no FDIC insurance to make you whole.
You have to protect your own keys.
There is no central authority to reverse the theft. You are completely on your own. You are replacing centuries of jurisprudence, courts, and banking law with Section 11 gambler's ruin formulas.
So what does this all mean for the listener? We were looking at a fundamental philosophical stalemate here.
Yes, we are.
Trust in the messy, corruptible, but flexible human institutions. Or trust in the cold, rigid, but incorruptible mathematics of the blockchain.
It really comes down to how you view human nature and systemic risk. To summarize my view on this document, and really this whole debate, freedom is a heavy word. 9 pages of code can't replace 5 centuries of banking law. Satoshi gave us a brilliant engine, but he forgot to build the brakes. In this world, if the math fails, you're on your own.
And from where I am sitting, unpacking the history and the code, Satoshi Nakamoto didn't just write a PDF. He wrote a way for 8 billion people to agree on the truth without needing a king. The white paper is 9 pages of pure, unadulterated freedom.
It is a radical proposition, whether you view it as a breakthrough or a hazard.
The blueprint is in the wild. The code is running. The only question left is, do you trust the math or do you trust the man?